What is the crack? Today we'll be talking turn one incidents. We've all been there, guys. Um, Going into turn one, all of a sudden you get taken out. You brake too late. You brake too early. I had nowhere to go. You didn't give me space. What the hell were you doing? I locked up. I was hit. There was nothing I could do. You turned in on me. We've got all those things always. Not always in a private league, but in a public server, you're pretty much guaranteed to see that kind of stuff, regardless of the sim. I'm using a set of courses today as an example. This is just a recent race I was in. Stuff like this can happen. The purpose of this video is to show that when an incident happens like this, we should think more about the responsibility that people have rather than trying to blame and say, oh, you did it, whatever, because you're only likely to get involved in an incident if you put yourself into that position. I'm going to explain that in a little bit more detail, but basically there are certain things that I'm going to outline here, a couple of kind of golden rules that will get rid of at least half of your, if you're one of those people who just goes and races, gets involved in turn one incidents almost every week. I hate to break it to you, but there's probably more you can do to avoid the incident, even if you are getting hit. Someone's hitting you from behind, someone's turning in on you, whatever. So I'm going to go into some of those. The first and golden rule is you need to get your position on the track. In this clip that I'm about to show you, there's a corner to the right hand side. You want to get on the inside. You want to get towards the right hand side, even if it's not the fastest way around that corner. You want to get to the right hand side because a number of reasons. You're not opening a gap for somebody else to try and dive bomb, so you're eliminating all dive bombs the second you're over at the right hand side. Someone might try go around the outside, which is a risky tactic, and if they can do it, more power to them. I would rather lose a position at the start than get taken out of it by somebody who's a little bit over ambitious. The amount of times that I've grabbed position on the right hand side, even starting on the grid like this on the left, and someone has come around me and I've actually been able to slightly squeeze them to an extent, depending on the track. Sometimes you have plenty of space. You don't need to squeeze people unless you're that type of driver. But in some cases, you have a very sharp first corner where you have no choice but to go to the left-hand side. So if someone's coming around the outside, they have no real choice but to back off. Obviously, it depends on the driver where you line up on the grid. I find in a grid of about 25-30 people, the top 8 positions are generally relatively safe. The bottom 8 positions are relatively safe. But that leaves about 14 places in the middle of the pack that are just can get pretty crazy. So first thing, assume your position on the right hand side. People can't dive bomb you. You're also in a lot more control of your own destiny, because it's not always a dive bomb. Someone might come up the inside and they might lock up on the brakes and end up taking you out. If you don't allow them that opportunity to go up the inside, they're never going to lock up and hit you. And then, of course, people are saying, oh, well, if someone comes up behind you and they hit you from behind, what the hell are you supposed to do? These are Formula cars. They don't have brake lights. There's plenty you can do. You can, as you're approaching a corner, especially turn one, you can start applying the brakes slowly. Someone behind you is going to see that you're slowing down. They're going to panic on the brakes. You haven't slammed on the brakes, and you never should slam on the brakes in turn one, especially if their car is very, very close to you. You should ease on the brakes. And we're talking fractions of a second. We're talking tenths here, not full coasting through a corner or whatever, or making life difficult for yourself. If you even break off, even just leaving off the accelerator, a car behind you will see that they're approaching you, and they will actually know that it's their time to brake. Yes, it's not the quickest way through the corner, but it's turn one. People have cold tires, so that's my golden rule. That's probably the most important one. Get your position on the track. Get that inside line if possible. Even if you line up on the left hand side of the grid and it's a right hand corner, try and get that position. Now, if you are on the left hand side and there are cars on the right hand side, they will come up on the inside. You need to make sure that you go around that outside pretty nice and quickly. If somebody locks up or whatever, they're not going to gain speed and hit you. So even similar to where the cars are on screen right now, if you're going around the corner and that car is on the inside, even if that car locks up, you'll be able to see it. Yes, it's going to slow you down. Sorry. but the car behind is probably not going to be too close. So if they lock up, they're not going to gain speed and hit you. So you can stay on the outside if you're in the right position. But my overall recommendation would be you've got enough to think about. Stay on the inside of the track. So I'm going to play a little bit of an incident here, and you guys are going to say, oh, well, that was a really difficult one to avoid. A couple of people involved in it. And I'm going to rewind in a second and show all the people who I think are slightly out of position and the ones who are in position. So incident here, car gets taken out, very typical and very hard to avoid, but I'm going to tell you how. You can see when the cars start, a couple of things happen, and this is kind of my number two. When you start, you should always be prepared for cars being stopped on the grid. All you can see is the back of the car in front of you when you're in car like this. You can't see what's going on up ahead. So you need to be prepared to have an exit strategy. If the car in front of you, like in this case, if the car in front of me was to brake, stall on the line or whatever, I can either go left or I can go right. And there is an example of that happening here. So here we go. And this car, in my opinion, did exactly the right thing. Because the car in front stops, the car gets stable and pointed in a straight line beside it, then realizes, hang on, I had a wobbly start, so I'm going to go even wider, uses all of the track that's available, then reassesses the situation and stays on the inside. Now, the reason I'm picking on this car is, look at the amount of space that this car has. All of those cars are assuming their qualifying line, assuming their fastest line, which is go out wide, cut through the corner. But this car is obviously aware that you're not going to be carrying that much speed there. And there is a car coming up behind. There's a car clipping at his heels. So you can see in the replay here, you can see there's a car biting at his heels. But he's not panicking. Incident happens in the background. And this car is not losing any positions. It's just keeping a good track position. Look, again, on the inside, a nice disciplined approach, closing the door on this car behind. Just really, really good driving and good control of track position without overdriving the car. Let's jump back. So that car does a great job of making space for itself on the grid. So here, jump back a couple of cars. You can see that when cars line up, there are two clear rows. And you can either stick to those rows or you can create a new one. If you're creating a new row of cars, you're pretty much asking for trouble. You've got all the people on your right to deal with, all the people on your left, and people are going to think, hey, that guy has a great idea, let's go up the middle. Unless you're significantly faster or you have a reason to be there, stay to the right or stay to the left in general. Preferably stay over to the right if it's the right hand corner. So if we look, as we go up here, we see there are lots of cars out of position. Now this is not unusual. This is the guy that we were following just there who stayed way out to the right. Here we've got cars almost 3 wide and using half of the track. Now this car says, oh, I'm faster than this car, I'm gonna go around that car. So that car gets a pretty decent drive. This car here is staying out wide, wants to take that corner quite fast, as does everyone. But we can see as we approach this corner, we've got a couple of cars out of position. Namely, this car maybe thinks that it can overtake that car. This car is in the very center of the track. Very dangerous place to be. If this one makes any mistake, could hit this car. If this car locks up, it could keep going straight and take out this car. Now, obviously, in this case, this car doesn't rotate in time or doesn't turn in on time, I guess, and ends up taking out the car on the outside. And the car on the outside is probably, damn it, I got taken out again. But if you follow my advice, look at how stuck to the left of the track he is. He could have, now he doesn't get many opportunities, but at this point of the race, he can already start moving right. But by moving left, he opens up the right, and there are about 3 or 4 cars that say, I'll have some of that, take the inside. So without knowing it, while trying to be perfectly safe, this car is actually creating a hell of a lot of problems for itself. And that's pretty important. So if this car was over where this Canon car was, it would be in a lot less trouble. Watch this car, watch that car, and they could have been, this car actually started ahead of that car as far as I'm aware. And when you are on the outside, everybody on your inside could potentially take you out. When you're on the inside, unless somebody goes over the grass, nobody's going to take you out. Unless you make a mistake, in which case it's your fault, you're going to get through turn one. That's almost a given. And again, as I say, if somebody comes up behind you and they hit into the back of you, by applying gradual braking, they'll see that you're about to slow down. They know there's a corner coming. It reminds them a little bit that you have the potential to slow down. And then they won't hit you. They may come close to you or whatever, but they know that you're in a braking kind of a cycle or a braking mode. So this is an unfortunate incident between these two cars. And then the car behind gets involved as well. So pretty unfortunate for that other car. Let's look at it from that car's point of view. What could that car have done? So race starts. Now if we look around, there is a massive gap over here. If you applied the principle of going over to the right hand side, this car would have been nowhere near, and this car makes no mistakes up until the last minute, and then it's often too late. You're not expecting to be involved in an incident, even if it's turn one. So by being out on the left here, there's a massive pack of cars where this car could be tucked up in here. Let them do whatever they need to do and get around the inside, like this car over here has done. So as soon as this incident happens, so here you can see this car's out of position. They're effectively 3 wide. There's another car in front. This is a dangerous place to be. And if you look over to the right, there's an acre of space. Could have easily gone over to that side. So when the impact happens ahead, the car doesn't take the evasive action necessary. But even at this point, when an accident happens in front of you, you don't really know what's to your right. You're not prepared if you're in this position. So if you did steer to the right, you might end up taking out other people. So the easiest thing to do is just never be on the right. Or never be on the left, sorry. That's the easiest thing to do by far. So here, car gets taken out, collected, and now in many cases that could be a race ruiner, but here this car ends up third last, without any real say in the matter. So golden rule: assume that position on the right hand side of the track if it's a right hand corner, and be prepared. You need to just be prepared for turn one incidents. A lot of people like to be victimized in turn one incidents. It's just not a good idea to it's not a good idea to always blame others for what happens in turn one. You've plenty of things that you can do to avoid it. Even if you're on the right hand side, you're not guaranteed, you're not bulletproof. It doesn't mean you can take more risk or whatever. But if any of you have watched a lot of my streams, I apply a lot of that stuff, and I end up having so many near misses. It makes for great highlights reels and stuff like that. Because when other people crash, I tend to be in a position where I didn't allow myself to be too involved in the crash. Now, if they're going everywhere, spinning all over the track and coming back over, there's some things you can do. For instance, if a car starts spinning, you should always aim towards the back of that car. Probably doesn't make sense right now if you've never heard that before, but when a car starts spinning, it's generally moving in a direction that the back isn't. So if you move towards the back, the car is probably going the opposite way. You end up missing it, usually, unless it's spinning violently. But there's no harm in braking either. People need to be prepared for turn one incidents. But this is how you can minimize them. And I use my league here, and I'm sorry for picking on the guys in this video. I'm not mentioning them or whatever because they are fantastic drivers. I've wanted to do a quick video. I spent the last hour looking through my replays trying to find turn one incidents for our league, and that's kind of the quality of driving that we have come to expect. Even when people are slightly out of position, putting themselves at risk, it often pays off for them. So there's a flip side to it, and when you trust the drivers around you, it makes a massive difference. But my golden rule: stay over on the right hand side. If it's the right hand corner, left hand side if it's left hand corner. Keep your distance. You're not going to win in turn one. You may lose some positions, but odds are if somebody's fighting for positions in turn one, they're eventually going to bin themselves anyway. So that's how you avoid your turn one incidents. I hope this helps some people. And if it does, give a like, give a subscribe, give a comment below as well if there's anything that any feedback that you have, or any tips that you have for avoiding turn one incidents. That's it from me for today, and I will chat to you later. Take it easy.